You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Giving us a coupon code. So if you're interested in posting a casting call for a free basic listing, use coupon code DBPodcast. And I will also link to that in the show notes. So again, that's at Backstage Casting, and you'll actually get a free basic listing with this coupon code. Not a lot of show notes for this episode because we talk a lot about producing this episode. Just the nitty-gritty of it all. Just actually about making your film and some of the things that my guest this week has actually seen, experienced, working on all these awesome projects. He's been mentored by Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Mann. We talk all about what do you do as a producer when somebody comes to you and they want to make a movie and they don't have anywhere near enough money to do so. What do you do in that circumstance? Well, there's a couple of different ways to go, but we talk all about what my guest recommends. And we talk all, again, about producing in general and many, many different facets, putting movie packages together. This is episode 173 with guest Sevier Crespo.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
I got started very simply. I tried out for the baseball team, and I didn't make it in high school, and I had to fill the first period with a class of some sort, and I refused to pick something that was actual work. And I picked theater, and I was like, I think I'll just pick theater. And I showed up, and a lot of attractive girls and not that many guys. And I was like, this is awesome, and then I pretty much, my first time on stage, I got the bug and I was blown away and thought it was phenomenal. And then from there I went and, started taking acting classes, and then I went to the Conservatory for the Performing Arts, which I kind of was doing all of that in the performing arts and acting and everything. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and before that, I actually a buddy of mine at the time, we did a short little film for a contest or something that he was working on. His name was oh gosh, my name escapes me now. A little embarrassing.
It happens all the time.
Anyway, yeah.
It happens to me all the time.
But yeah. So anyway, we did a short film, and I remember thinking, God, this is kind of exciting. And I remember thinking also, like, God, this could be so much better. But people liked it and enjoyed it, and it was fun and simple, and it was, we laughed a lot. But I thought, God, this is kind of cool. And that was it. And then I kind of came to Los Angeles, and it just through meeting people, became assistants and worked as a production assistant and was involved on sets and things like that. And I just really enjoyed it. And then when I got some opportunities to learn on the developing side and producing and that whole world, I realized I was actually really, really good at it. And I really loved it, and I like it. And, it reminded me of, and funny enough, when I used to play baseball, that team mentality, and always kept that team mentality because it takes an army and a team, a great team, to win, if you will. So, and from there, it just kind of moved forward.
I actually played Little League. So, yeah, I didn't play in high school. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but once you hit a certain point when playing baseball in school, when the parents start to get involved, everything stops becoming fun. And I remember when I was playing Little League, man, the other kids' parents would get involved, and they would start telling the coach what to do, and the coach was yelling back at them, and it just sucks everything out of all the fun out of it, man. You're like, we're just kids playing a freaking game. We're not in the Game 7 of the World Series here. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting because I have a story about that. So, like, growing up in Puerto Rico and playing baseball, there was we grew up, we would heckle each other. But I always grew up, I think heckling in a I think in a fun, light way, very competitive way, really. I mean, look, you're playing a game, and the goal is to win the game, right? So we would heckle the other players when there would be a bat and things like that. And it was always very light. I think I just, it was a little different back then. So nothing was ever taken personal or serious. Nothing ever mean. It was always kind of related to batting or whatnot. And when I came to the States, I remember I played. I think it was Little League as well, maybe a little older, for a short time. And I remember being told, yeah, you can't do that here. Like we don't play that way. That's not how you play baseball, and it's not how you do it. And I remember thinking, well, that's not fun. Am I supposed to just stand out here in the outfield and wait for someone to hit the ball? And I'm like, we have one ball, and he may or may not hit it. It may never reach me, So I just kind of was a very interesting shift in it. And then you would then have the parents get crazy, and you're just like, okay, hold on. You're telling me that I can't say anything, but I have this adult yelling at a little kid or at the coach of a little league game? Like, that's weird to me. So anyway, it's a very, I can definitely see where, I definitely know what you mean with that.
Yeah, the parents would get so into it. It's like, they're living vicariously through their kids, and they're just like, come on, every hit shot a home run, put my kid in. I'm like, and even as kids, you were like, what the fuck? Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
Like, we're like, you knew something wasn't right. You just, then everyone would just sort of get, just got tired of it. And so, moving on from baseball, I know there's probably people listening going, "Come on, this is a film podcast. I'm talking about baseball."
Right.
So as you moved on, and you kept on doing all this film production work. You mentioned like the team aspect of it. How did you find other projects from there? Did you maybe just have connections in the industry at the time, and they would you would sort of like put your resume in for them, or did you create your own, or so how did you go about keeping busy in the film industry?
It's interesting. For a long time, it was very up and down, and it was very a little difficult, because I would just send out resumes all the time. Like, I would send out resumes literally everywhere, all the film websites, Craigslist. I mean, you name it, I would send out, And funny enough, one of the films that I did, I got through just submitting on an ad in Craigslist. Like, it was just this ad that said, looking for a producer, line producer, money is already in place. And I just submitted, and I got an interview, and I went and I got it. And it had a nice budget, and I was like, whoa. So that was actually one of the ways that I got one of the films that I did. So I think it was just always sending out resumes, or now, eventually talking to people or seeing what people are up to. And there's so many nowadays people that can say they're producers, or they do film or TV, or now you have web series and things like that, web content, web TV shows or shows, that the market can get very saturated, and it kind of then also becomes a little bit about who not necessarily. So I think that's why also I got into line producing. So I really loved that aspect of it, because it was the ultimate understanding on how to really navigate a project and what it takes. And I think that's the only way to really figure out what works, what doesn't work, how to make it better. So I think once I learned how to line produce, then I realized, very few people can do this job. And this job requires you to know what you're doing, like an editor, like a composer, like a director, more like a cinematographer, really. Because don't want to invalidate directors or say anything negative about directors, or because directing in its own is a lot of work. It's extremely lot of work. But the catch on that is that a lot of people can also pick up the camera and say, I'm a director, or not even pick up the camera, but have someone else pick up the camera and operate it and say, I'm a director, I want to direct this. Which again, it's a little tricky, because you have to start somewhere, and you have to start by believing that you're something, right? In order to become it. It's like a be, do, have. You have to be it and do it and then have it. In return, how many people really think like that versus just take on the persona of a quote-unquote Kubrick or Scorsese or Spielberg because they've read all their books or watched documentaries or watched interviews with them. So, you know, I think there's a lot. It's such a fine line that it's hard to really say anything negative about any particular area. But some areas or some positions require some serious skills, you know, that you can spot instantly, whether someone knows how to do it or they do not know how to do it. And I think definitely when I learned how to line produce, I realized, at least immediately around me, almost no one knew how to do that or what it took to do that. And I think that was the foundation where I started to go, okay, I like this. You know, I am a producer. I came from a creative background, and I am a producer and a creative producer. So I just combined the two. And so therefore my abilities expanded, my self-worth expanded, so I could be creative story-wise, but also knew what it would take to physically do the project and get it done with what was available or what it would take. So I think that was the beginning of that.
So, you know, you mentioned, Sevier, about you know, knowing what it's going to take. Oftentimes in this podcast, you know, I talk with guests about budgets and expectations. So it's sort of like an expectation is what you hope to accomplish, or maybe even what you want to accomplish, and the reality is what you can accomplish with the resources you have, you know, available. And a big one that I see in indie film is like people who try to do like time period pieces, like with like a $10,000 budget, and you know you're gonna get eaten up in like, you know, Civil War clothes or Revolutionary War clothes, you know, just those outfits alone are like, you know, $10,000, you know, and that's not to count in the cast and the crew and everything else. So, you know, when you're looking at these budgets, and at this point in time, you know, you were developing that skill of being able to sort of do that. Did you ever encounter something like that where you encountered and said, you know, hey guys, you know, you might have $20,000 or $30,000. You know, this is not enough to make this film. Have you ever encountered something like that?
All the time. I encounter that all the time. You know, on a weekly basis, I encounter that. And the thing is, look, just so you know, that mentality doesn't change when you have millions of dollars. You know, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Believe it or not, I do projects that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the mentality. That still happens, you know. So you have to know when you're working with someone or someone's proposing something that they're in the ballpark, right? Because if they're in the ballpark, then there's a chance to make a movie, a good movie, or a movie, period, right? A movie, good is irrelevant. It could either be good, it could come out crappy, you know, you could miss the mark totally and it's not what you expected, but at least you're in the ballpark. So yeah, that happens. It happens a lot. And again, it goes back to a lot of people, they see it in their mind, they know what they want to do, they know what they want to create, and what they want to, you know, show people. But that's in concept. You know, when you start doing things in reality, things change a lot. You know, it's like when you're building a cake, it's like you can follow the directions on making a cake. It's like building, you don't build a cake, you make a cake. When you're making a cake, right? And it's like you can follow the instructions on the box or online or on a blog on how to make the cake. But if you want to make an award-winning cake and you want to have layers and texture and all these elements to it, it takes more than just concepts of me going, you know, I saw this great picture of this cake and I want to make that. Or, you know, I'm going to follow the recipes in, on this blog or in a book, to make the cake. You have to then understand, okay, what kind of ingredients did they use? What kind of, materials, kitchen, materials did they use to make the cake? Like all of the elements, right?
Yeah.
Like stove or heat or temperature or time. And I think those are the elements. And even then, you could come close or you could totally bomb it, and that's the same way in the film industry or filmmaking, so it's concept is great. That's why, we people go to the movies, that's why people buy movies, they watch movies, TV shows. It's because of the effect you're able to, create on them, or the experience they're able to take, or the journey they're able to take. But it's more than that, because then you have to then go into physicality, the physical world and the reality of life, to then create that. And that in itself is where you have to know all the small pieces to get that concept that is in your mind or in the writer's mind or on the script or the script itself.
Yeah, and I like the analogy of making the cake, because again, it's all about the quality of ingredients. It's all about the ingredients that you have, and maybe there's a difference between, there is a difference between making like a 7-layer cake and a little bit of maybe a little bundt cake or something like that. It's if we're shooting for like this huge wedding cake style thing here, we're not going to be able to do it on a almost nothing budget. But I think so. Just to sort of tie in with money, and we were talking about this on my in the podcast, we talk about money a lot. And on Twitter, I actually had a poll through the DB Podcast Twitter page. We had a poll about what is really stopping you from making your movie, and the number one answer was money, because I gave money, a crew, a shootable script, and the fourth one was I don't know. It could be anything. So the number one answer was money. And, people were saying, well, Dave, what can you do with, if you have money, you have it all, And I always say maybe, because see, the thing is, you have sometimes, I had a friend of mine, he was going to make a movie. He said, if I have to shoot this in my backyard, I'm going to do it. And I said, awesome, dude, have that mentality that you're going to do this no matter what, and then he turned around and all of a sudden he needed $500,000 to shoot this movie about a couple of guys in a living room. And I said, what the hell is $500,000? I don't understand this. And he was telling me all about a bunch of different stuff. And literally the whole movie takes place in like in like a guy's living room. So I don't understand. I still don't understand where the $500,000 comes from. But you know what I mean?
Right.
It's stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you've seen that too, where simple things that take, maybe a movie. Let's for instance, you have a movie that takes place in like one location or two or three, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, we need about $10 million or something to make this movie, which is the exact opposite problem we were just talking about. But you see that too. And at what point, Sevier, do you have like a conversation with the filmmakers? Is it when they finally approach you and say, here's Sevier, here's the script, and we're looking for $5 million for this, short film or something, something ridiculous?
Yeah, I think what I always do, I always ask them, like, how did you envision this? How did you envision the script? How did you envision shooting it? How did you envision the locations, the elements, everything? Because I want to know what their point of view is and where they're coming from. First of all, story related and story only. Because when I read the project, I'm going to know instantly what's the minimal, what would be nice, and then from there on, what would be great, right? I will know instantly after I'm done with the project, all those elements. And so look, there's so many different factors. You have like, are you doing a film because you want to sell it and get distribution and get money or go theatrical or whatever? Just, that's one aspect of it or one side. If you're just going to do a movie and you want to just do a movie and you want to just do movies to do them and learn and grow and expand and get to all those levels where you're constantly, then you sell them, then you have to make a living at it, then you keep going up and up and up and up. What you need is passion. What you need is passion and dedication and commitment. You got to treat it like it's a job. You got to breathe and live it and love it every single day. If you don't love what you do, then you're going to it's going to be this business will destroy you. You're going to have a very, very, very bad experience because money isn't going to change anything. I'm around people that have a lot of money all the time. And I met and I know people that are extremely miserable, and they have money. They have their house in the hills. They have their brand new 2018 vehicle, SUV. They have everything. They're miserable, and I know people that do major blockbuster movies that are miserable. So money isn't the answer, and it doesn't solve anything. And just so when someone says, the reason the budgets change so much and can change is because you have a lot of factors. If you want name actors or you want actors that are of value, quote unquote, they're usually, actually almost always, I'm going to say always because it's not almost, always will be part of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA union. And then that changes the game because then you have WGA, which is the Writers Guild, and you have DGA, which is the Directors Guild. Then you have the Producers Guild, and then you have IATSE, and then it just keeps going. And then you have the Teamsters. So at that level, there's contracts that come into play. There's different contracts for different levels. If you're doing a film for $200,000, if you're doing a film for $500,000, if you're doing a film for 1.5, 2.5, 4 million and over, 5 million and over. So at that point, that's where the money starts to get eaten up and justified, because all of those elements require money and fringes and pension and health and, all of those elements and their salaries and the overtime and, for everybody. And then you have this physical production, and then you have what it takes to accommodate people at that level. All that then starts to justify and add up. Sometimes there's areas where it's unjustifiable, that's just kind of the nature of the business, but that's kind of where it goes. That's where, that is, right? But if you're just going to do a movie, you can just do a movie, and a person that I admire a lot is the Duplass brothers, because they literally, if anybody wants to kind of know, just go do it. Listen to them. Listen to their podcast. Listen what they're about, because I love them. I think they're fantastic. And yeah, you want to make money doing it. But I think if that's your motivation or if that's what you think you need, you're going to lose and you're never going to create anything.
Yeah, and the Duplass brothers, we mention them a lot here on the podcast, especially the advice that Mark Duplass gave out, where he said, look, your first movie should be the $3 movie. Go out and make a movie for $3. Use whatever you have to do. And the reason, I always bring this up is make the cheap mistakes, because if you're making mistakes and you're saying, hey, look, my first movie's got to cost $50,000 or whatever. And I've had friends who've had that happen to them. They've actually made like a short film or whatever for like $50,000, $100,000. And it has all gone to crap, and now they're out that money rather than if they just took some money and actually like a couple of bucks, like $100, and actually tried to make something for that, and just said, let's see what happens with that. You don't. I'm sorry, Sophie.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, look, if you spend $50,000 on a short film, or $100,000 on a short film, and you're just starting out or you're new with zero experience, I don't know. I am not a fan of that. Unless you have it. If you have it to throw away and waste, by all means, go for it. It's all you know, it's all relevant to where you are in life, right? And what you're able to do. But realistically, it's like, man, just go do it. Like you said, and like Duplass said, it doesn't take anything to go do it, because you may hate it, like go do it, because you may hate it, or you may realize that's not what you want to do, So don't throw away $50,000 or $100,000 on something that you're just gonna go for it. It's there's, I think that we have nowadays, there's so much access to entertainment and entertainment people and celebrities and the world of film and TV from all medias, from social media to all the apps on Apple TV and the Hulus, the Netflix, the Amazon. You can watch anything almost anywhere, YouTube. And it creates, there's a false sense of like, you have to be like someone, or this is how it has to be, or, this is the only way, or, we have to make money at it and we have to be like these people did it. It's like, no, we've all just gone for it. And a lot of the times people that have made it in the business or have made the business, or the entertainment business, has came from people that are kind of a bunch of independent people that just went for it. The Spielberg, the everybody, they just kind of went for it. The Duplass brothers, like, they just, it's just littered with more people that just packed their bags and came here, or did it where they live in their hometown or their home country. They just did it. And they found their own voice, their own point of view, their own way of doing things, because there isn't one way of doing it. And I think because of that, you have people that want to just go ahead and, spend that kind of money doing it right off the gate, and I don't know. I think you could just, I think knowledge is everything. If you start to educate yourself really on it and start small and play around, then you go from there, because money isn't going to solve the lack of point of view. Money isn't going to solve not knowing how to do it. And I've seen this, the film festivals and a lot of, just all over the place, is just filled with that. I won't say film festivals, but just, for the most part, the industry itself, let's say, is filled with a lot of films that I've seen, including some of my own, where it's like, yeah, money didn't solve that. We just didn't know how to execute that.
Yeah, it's
so.
Yeah, it's that perspective, that vision. They have to have that unique vision for the project, and if they don't have that, again, money can't solve that problem. And we've seen that too, where they want to emulate what somebody else did, but when somebody else does that first, I don't really know if you could emulate them. Like Paranormal Activity with Oren Patelli making that for $14,000 and then pitching it to Spielberg, or maybe the Blair Witch Project and how the marketing for that. I think honestly projects like that are so unique that you can't actually replicate that. So I think that's. But even then, I want to be crystal clear on that. Even then, they didn't just point a camera, and shot something, and then it was instant success and magic. Like, no, it was shot well enough to where someone was like, this is amazing, let's buy it. They invested more money into the fixing of it. The post-production, the sound design, the color correction. Then they invested more money into the marketing aspect of it and the whole thing. So it wasn't, that's the falseness of everything, where it's like, oh, like even the movie that was shot, I think was last year's, one of last year's successes. It could have been this year's, I don't know, it was last year's, the film that was shot on the iPhone. Tangerine?
Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, and then then of course, guess what? Everyone went out and tried to replicate that. It wasn't just that simple, people. Like, it didn't work like that. They shot a great little film. Actually, that's what's brilliant about it. If you think about it, that's a perfect example of how you just go do it, right? And then, but those other pieces, you can't shoot something on your iPhone and blast it in theaters. There's a process that goes through that. There's a lot of elements, a lot of things that have to take place before that's even viewable, and the quality and the editing and a lot of elements to it. It wasn't like shoot it on your iPhone, do the editing on iMovie, and then boom, there's your movie.
It's funny. I actually had the director of Tangerine on the podcast, Sean Baker. His podcast episode is still the number one most downloaded episode ever, by far and away. A lot of people were when I got to interview him right before, like, it just exploded in popularity, and people were like looking for the film and trying to do other things to hear about how he did it. So I got him right before that, and then all of a sudden it hit, and then all of a sudden, like, I looked at all these downloads from his episode, and it was just astronomical. I mean, like, astronomical how many he has.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And of course, because and I want to listen to that because I want to hear what he has to say. I'm also a big fan of other filmmakers. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be the Mark Duplass's, you can be the Spielbergs. Sofia Coppola, like at any level, I just love all of them. I love every aspect of it. And I love hearing their points of views and what they have to say. So I'm a fan of learning about it. One thing I love about this industry is you never reach, at least my point of view, or, my opinion is that you never reach like, done. I know it all. I'm at the top. There's nothing more to accomplish, So anyway, that sounds great, and that's fantastic. I'd love to hear what he has to say about it all, and the process, because that's intriguing. That's great. That's so great.
Yeah. It was a great interview. And also, we talked a lot about the other films, because just really quickly, there are a few films that have been shot on an iPhone. There was I think it was called like Night Fishing, by Park Chan-wook. I think there was another one. I can't remember who it was. And then there was, of course, Tangerine. And then there's two other ones that just came out. Steven Soderbergh just shot one on a phone. And there was another one. I can't remember who it was. But there was like 4 or 5 movies that have been shot on a phone now. And, it's just, and the thing is too, Sevier, just to mention to everybody, they didn't just pick up an iPhone and start shooting. They have like special lenses. They have rigs for everything. They planned the shooting before they did it. They didn't, you know what I mean? Like even Sean Baker said in the interview, he told everybody in a very, very nice way. He goes, look, I know everyone, as soon as I pull out the phone, everyone got nervous. And I said, we're shooting it on this. I said, he said, I have a long talk with everybody that no, this isn't going to look like some cheap, movie or something like that. He goes, we've got lenses for it and everything else. And it's not about, we're not just going to, it's not going to be like some student project or anything like that. He said, it's actually going to have it's going to have quality to it. So that's what
exactly. Exactly. So then, okay. So, I was actually nervous for a second. I was like, oh my God, is he going to say it was all done, through the iPhone and they just exported it? But I was like, no, I actually know better. There's no way that would ever happen. It's not that it doesn't work that way. That's just a fact. But, that I was going to say something about that because, but it's interesting that you touch on something, I'm almost positive, and I'm going to assume here because I haven't heard him talk about it, but there was probably a lot of planning and a lot of knowledge. Like he must have had, you have to know what you're getting into and really research it and study it and commit to it and dedicate yourself to it and kind of know your craft. That you got to do that before then, unless you're just a shitty person, where you just kind of like convince people that you're going to do, Clockwork Orange, and you end up doing just this terrible piece of work because you just self-indulged and didn't care and then you had other people commit to that, and then you kind of, bamboozle them a bit, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Because in order to get people to kind of commit and deliver, you yourself have to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. I've actually seen a few of those projects myself, by the way, where people have been bamboozled into something. It's one thing, and then they say it's one thing, and then they get everyone to commit, and then it turns out to be a whole other thing. And
well, hold on, but there's a difference to that, right? Because look, that's happened to me. I'm not gonna lie. I've done, I'd say, out of the films that I'm going on 8 features now, and then I think the 9th and 10th are on the works. But it's just like, okay, I have some films where I've been like, this is where I wanted it to go. This is what, I discussed it with everybody. This is what the plan is. And it just went south, man. Like, a lot of elements, it's like you're just, a captain trying to steer through the storm of the ship. It's like you just at least don't have it go down. At some point, it's like, at least just don't go down, Let's just get to where we're gonna go regardless, but at least don't sink, But I think that's a little different. I think, you sometimes look. That's actually the kind of high when you're making independent filmmaking, or films, or working in this business. No one knows 100% how it's gonna turn out. It's an amazing show that I just watched, documentary called Showrunners, which is about showrunners in television, and, on iTunes. It's fantastic. It's about the showrunners that, it create and do some of the top shows on television today, or that they've done the top television shows in the past, or hits, or even failures, and it's phenomenal, man. No one knows what's happening. You can only know what you know, and you commit to it and you go for it. But there's such a huge gap of uncertainty. It's unbelievable, and it's being able to live with that gap of uncertainty and live in it, where the craziness and the magic all works at the same time. So, but what I'm just talking about is I've met people where, like, it's like, well, this is what we're gonna do. This is what my vision is, and it's just not even realistic. It's not even in the ballpark, and you're really just trying to sell someone on something that there's no way.
Yeah, it's yeah, and again, like we were talking about that too, where some people will pitch you a project and you're just like, there's no way that this is going to work. And yeah, and that comes with experience too, so because when everyone starts off, they go, hey, we're gonna make an action movie for $10. Well, how are you gonna do that? Well, hey, look, I got Action Essentials from Red Giant, and I got my iPhone, and we're gonna shoot it that way. You know what I mean? Like, and we're gonna use a plug-in. The Action Essential pack from Red Giant is all those plug-ins for, like, the muzzle flashes and spent brass from the gun, and the dings on the debris flying and stuff like that. And it's just like you got to put together a little more. You got to put together more than that, And it's just and that's where I think that comes from experience. When you first start off, you're like, yeah, let's go do this, man. $10.
But you know what? Yeah, and look, that is true, and even with experience, right? Like, I think one thing that I've noticed is, you have to go out there and fail. You learn you have to understand the melody before you can riff, right? If you start off trying to riff without understanding the melody or music or being able to read music, it's never, you have no foundation, and you have nowhere to have a safety net or a boundary. So you don't even know when you've gone onto the crazy zone, because you don't even know where crazy is. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of the problems. Like, you just learn and know and understand the basics. Understand the basics and what it takes to do what it is you want to do, so you can riff. And in the process of that, you're going to fail while learning. Then you're going to fail while learning how to riff. And, now that I've worked on so many productions across the board, from commercials to music videos to feature films, to high-end projects on TV, pilots, web series, successful web series, you name it. I think what I like the most now, because I know I feel like, okay, I know how to do this, and I know how to do it really, really well. Now I'm like, okay, I kind of enjoy the failing aspect of it. Not necessarily failing in the sense of, wasting people's money or not doing a great job or being reckless or insensitive. But I think like taking chances and more chances and being okay with failing, because that's kind of the failing I think for me is now where I just learn the most. But also I know where to fail. I know where to take the risks to where if it fails, it's not going to be detrimental.
So, and that's actually one of the next questions I have for you, Sevier, was, what tips do you have for filmmakers out there who are working with budgets for, maybe in the sort of like the no budget, area where they're working with maybe, I don't know, maybe 1,000 to maybe 50,000 or something like that, or even a little more than that, or maybe even a little less. What are some of the tips that you have found or that you could share with us about, how to save productions money? Is there, or maybe, is there a way that you sort of could pitch people to get, to maybe get stuff at a discounted rate? I mean, is there anything you could share with us?
Look, let's just start with being completely honest. On something between $1,000 to $50,000, even $100,000, depending on the project, no one's getting paid. I just finished doing actually a great short film with a great director and great crew and talent for free. The crew got paid. We made sure the crew got paid and made a little bit of money per day. We shot 2 days, 3 days. But I didn't get paid. I still have to actually put in money, to cover, some meals, breakfast and coffees and crafty and things like that, because of my other productions. I just dug through my garage and grabbed a bunch of, great crafty, to snacks and stuff to fill the days with, to keep everybody happy and content and not have to be junk food. But, it's, you're not going to make money. There is no money to be made. So I think if someone says, here, I have $1,000 to do a project, or even $50,000 to do a project, you got to go into it going, this is free. This is strictly because we want to do this. And then it's like, who do you want to play ball with? Who do you want to do this with that's going to turn out great and good? And where's the money going to go? And what's the story, right? So I think it's like, let's just get rid of the myth that people do these movies for no money and whatever, there's money to be made. There isn't. Okay, you have to just start off with, look, if someone wants to do a movie for this much, I would say, who are the people that want to do it with you, that believe in the project, believe in you, and believe in the project? Believe in you is actually great, but it's not as strong if someone believes in the project. And you want a team that believes in the project and that are gung-ho and in the way you are, right? Because I promise you, at some point, the long hours and the elements that you thought were going to work that don't work, and trying to find solutions and really using your mind and imagination to be creative, people will stop believing in you. You know what I mean? They'll be like, okay, you know what? I don't believe in you anymore. I think this ship is going to sink. So you got to make sure, just the captain of the ship, that everybody that comes on board at that level believes in the project, first of all, and then believes in one another, because the time will come, and it always does, where people will start looking at each other like, I think you're not doing your job. I don't think you're pulling your weight. Well, I think this. Well, I think you this. And if you guys don't believe in each other and you guys do not believe in the project, it will crash quickly. So that's kind of the first thing that I would, in my opinion, that I would say. Because then from there, what happens is when everybody believes in the project and everybody knows where everything stands, and you're an open book with each other, which is rare. You have to, that's something that I like to do starting from the beginning is I'm a very open book about everything. Finances, the money, where it's going, all the elements and why, you know? So there's no mystery. People don't start to think that someone's hiding something or keeping something from someone. You're a team, man. You know, you have to treat each other like that, right? So I think from that element, from that point of view, then what happens next is then you start to go, okay, everybody starts to get creative. Everybody feels invested. Everybody feels like they're part of something. Everybody then feels like they own something because they're giving it their all, their blood, sweat, and tears on it. So then the imagination kicks in. Creativity kicks in. People start to work together. They come up with solutions, you know, because that is what's going to get you over the long hours of craziness. Man, I was in Puerto Rico working on a film, and, you know, on this film, before I took my first official day off, and it wasn't even a full day, I had worked 26 days straight. Through part of pre-production, through a week or two of production. Like I was working every single day as a producer, line producer, 15 hours a day, you know, even more. And, you know, I had 2 days off, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to finally get to enjoy Puerto Rico, see my dad, see my family, go to the beach. We go to one of our locations, which is the main location of the entire movie. And it's a total disaster. Total disaster. And it's like, oh my God, we can't shoot here. This thing is like, there's no way I would ever, it was a guard shack. And I was like, there's no way we could shoot here. And there's no way I'm putting anyone in there because there's broken glass. There's possible needles in there from drug use. It's just horrific. And I'm like, oh man, guess what? We all of a sudden we have 2 days off, and then we're in this guardhouse the third day. So guess what? The days off that I thought I was going to have are gone because now I not only have to find a guardhouse, I now have to make sure that it's permitted or whatever I needed to have, that it's legit, that I can have my crew there, that we can shoot there, that we can do all of these elements. You know, I have 48 hours to do this. So, you know, everybody's going crazy. Everybody, at least meaning me and the director and, you know, luckily an amazing cinematographer, Diego. And so we're just, you know, we're going bananas trying to figure this out. And the locations person as well. And, you know, funny enough, you know, our scriptie, who was at some point pretty much became like a co-producer because she was just helping with everything, you know, we couldn't find anything. And it was too short of a notice to be able to get something. So then guess what? Out of nowhere, here comes my awesome production designer. Oh, I got 3 guys that work, you know, at Home Depot. You know, they can leave work to come help you build this guard shack. And they left work. We told them, we set a price on what they would do it for, which wasn't even a lot. And they built a professional, top of the line guard shack, you know, or guardhouse really, that we could put in the same location that we already had permitted and paid for, by the way, a lot of money, to then use that. Right. But then all of a sudden, man, people then didn't have any sleep. These people, you know, people worked through the night. I had all the production assistants from all departments then came and were moving things and painting and setting things up to pretty much be able to shoot our main location, because what we thought was taken care of through photos, mind you. So through photos, we picked it. It looked fantastic. It was great. And then we show up and it's not what we thought it was going to be. Now, granted, if you have a bigger budget movie, then the thing is you have way more people that can go do these tech scouts, do these location scouts. You know, there's more options to you. There's more time for the pre-production. Sometimes there isn't. So, you know, they came through. Everybody then chipped in to make it happen. And then everybody felt like they were invested. They were in. And at the end of the day, you know, we were done. And guess what? You know, we had one of the production assistants who was extremely hard worker. She's like, are you guys going to do anything with this guardhouse? And we're like, no, we're done shooting with it. You know, they're like, okay, great. Do you mind if I take it because I want to give it to my little niece, as like a dollhouse, and we'll paint. I was going to paint it pink, and the grips and gappers were like, absolutely. We're all like, you can take it, and then they helped her put it in their trucks and their cars to take it an hour away, for her niece. You see what I'm saying? So that's what you need to start making great films or great things. And to just expand that into multi-million-dollar movies, if you start talking to people like the Ridley Scotts and, the Jerry Bruckheimers and the Spielbergs, and I mean, even the Scorseses, you name it, everybody at the top, guess what? They will work with the same people over and over and over again, and they will almost never change their crew or their team. Why? Because they're all on the same page, and they all get each other, and they're all there for one common purpose and goal.
Yeah, and that's something too I found out over the years is why people always or famous directors always work with the same people, the same crew, because there's always that support system that they have, and particularly producers, because producers there's that same sort of flow, the same sort of vibe, and we talk about building a team. That's something that's on a set. What kind of set are you running? Is it very business-like, where everyone just has their job and there's not a lot of talking, or is it kind of like fast and loose? You know what I mean? And I've seen all of that over the years too, as I'm sure you've had, where you have different sets, and you got to everyone has to have that same mentality and be able to fit into that set, so that way they're actually able to work together.
Right. Well, look, I'm gonna tell you right now, from my experience, successful projects are never rigid and rough and business-like. They're usually very fun, very light, a lot of jokes. It's kind of in a family in a sense. You fight, you argue, you laugh, you cry. There's an open platform to express yourself, sometimes more than you'd like the other person to, but it always comes to, just light, keep it light, because we're not changing you're not doing something that's going to change the world. You're not curing, world hunger. It's not, that has the quote unquote famous saying, it's not brain surgery. You're not creating, a rocket ship to the moon. You're not creating civilization on Mars. You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing these extraordinary things. You're making a film. Keep it light. And you have to keep it light. Because, for crying out loud, man, what other job? I'm sure there's quite a few other jobs, but look, you work with people for 12 to 15-hour days, and if you're doing a film, 6, to 8 weeks. If you keep it, if you're not having fun and keeping it light and keeping it simple and creative, it's not gonna be a good experience.
Yeah, it's I've learned that too. And again, you got to keep it light and fun. And that's what I was going to make. When I've seen people too, whenever the littlest thing happens and people freak the hell out, it's like you got to remain calm, because especially producers, and the producers always have to seem like they're in control, they're in good hands. Meaning the cast, because if the producers are freaking out, everyone else is like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? What's the problem? Because if they're freaking out, we should be freaking out, So it's contagious. Some stuff like that is so contagious whenever, somebody freaks out. But so you mentioned that project, Sevier, where you work on the guardhouse. I mean, we've been talking for probably about 45 minutes now. I just wanted to ask really quickly, so what projects are you working on right now?
Well, I have a couple of projects. I have a project it's called Subversion that we're in the process of locking down our director. We're in the process of locking down our talent for the financing. We have a finance company that wants to finance the project, so we're just in the process of doing that process. I do have a couple of more projects that I really can't go into too much right now because of where they're at in the stages of it. So I want to keep those to the side for now. But I think what's coming up next is, for me personally, as a personal project, is this project Subversion that we now have Jacob Vargas attached to star as one of the leads. And then couple of projects outside of that. I have been offered a couple of films to possibly do on second half of the year here, and we'll just see where those go. But that's kind of where I'm at with those. But I do want to go back really quick because I know you asked me a question. I just realized this. What is my advice or suggestions to people that have very little money, right? Going back to that, because I think I went on a tangent about, the people in the crew. And I'm a big fan about of that, because that's actually the key. Even if you pay people, even if you had $1 million or $10 million or $100 million, if your crew doesn't believe in the project and they're there for the money or whatever, you're going to have some rough times, right? But if you don't have any money and you're starting out, what I would say is like, look, be realistic, just have a cool project, cool story. You're a storyteller. You're telling stories to people, right? You're still telling a story in a moment in time of a particular situation with a group of people that are experiencing something and going through something. Focus on that. Like, the story has to be first. I'd say just minimal locations, great characters, great story, because then you can do anything and people will watch. And also make sure you have great sound. People can forgive bad quality visually, but if you have crappy sound, it's like a dog whistle. People are going to hate you because you can't stop listening to something. You know what I mean? Like, your ears are always going to be listening. So the sound is important. It's extremely important. And also just great story, because then what happens is if you have a great story, also focus on doing a great story around what you have. If you only have, let's say, $1,000 cash, fine. What else do you have? I mean, you have your apartment, you have your car. What does your friends have? What do your friends have? What do friends of friends have? You know what I mean? Like, just what elements that equal money can you use? If you think about it, if you shoot an entire story in a car, let's say you were renting that car on a bigger budget movie, right? Well, technically, to rent a car or to, the picture vehicle, it's about $800 a day, something like that, depending on what the car is, maybe a little more, between $700 to $1,200, let's say, plus the car wrangler and all of that. I mean, if you do the math, you're looking at, you just use it for a week, let's say $6,500, right? Well, you just got that for free because you're using someone's car that works. Well, so if you were to add up all the elements that you're able to get because you already have, could equal a $200,000 movie. It could equal $1 million movie, depending on the elements and what you have. So I would just say that's the biggest thing, is forget about the money. Find out what you can use to tell your story that you already have. And then the money can go towards things that count, like feeding people properly, like any pieces of equipment that you need must have that you don't have. When I say a must have as well, like as far as a piece of equipment, I don't mean an Ari Alexa. Okay. That's not a must have. I mean, like an actual camera or lighting or a piece of equipment that, a sound mixer, someone that's valuable to the production, that's a must have. Because that's what I would say. I would say, look, if you're starting out, it's like, cool, make a story based on that. I do that now. The short film that we just did, I did that now. We just picked a location that we already had and set dress that and spend money on the parts that mattered, which was the crew and the lighting and set dressing, and the meals for the crew, good meals. And then also as well, anyway, that's what I do. And I find that also it keeps you, there's a reality to that, right? Is if you're going to do a personal project in one of your first projects, or even if you're playing around, it's like, what story do I want to tell? Well, I mean, it's going to start from you anyway, right? As the creator or the director or the producer or whatever, writer, it starts with you. So you're going to tell the story based on what you know. I think that's the best way to start, and as you get experience and you expand, Obviously, you can tell stories like Star Wars or whatever you want to do and grow from that. But you don't want to start off trying to do Star Wars, when you haven't done 2 films or a project, or you don't even have the money to do that. Unless you want to, which is the funny thing. The funny thing is there's quite a few cult classic movies that are just considered to be awful and terrible because the filmmakers went for it, but they just did their piece of art, man. And then, it's not the end all be all. What you create today won't be the last project, or shouldn't be the last project that you do. You should just keep creating and keep doing. So anyway, that's what I would say. I would say create something based on what you have or your world or your reality, and then use the money where you definitely need it. Because then you will be able to have a well-rounded project, and you're not really going to come short of anything.
Yeah, I like that advice too, Sevier. And that is, again, we have to sort of start small. And again, in the pre-interview, I was talking to you about just a few things, and that obviously I've done stuff, and I'm just going to throw it up on YouTube little by little, because there's no sense in just keeping it anymore. TV pilot that I did a couple years ago, probably like 5 or 6 years ago now. I'm going to put that up on YouTube for free. Hopefully it'll attract somebody where they're saying, hey, look what Dave did for this little amount of money. Little, relatively speaking, because it was like $10,000 or so we shot this TV pilot for, which was way over budget, which is a whole nother story about how that happened. But and just to see if I could gain some attention from that. And you got to start somewhere. And so, Sevier, we've been talking for, I guess, about an hour now. Oh,
wow.
I have that effect on people, Sevier. So just in closing, where can people find you at online?
People can find me at SevierCrespo.com or IMDb, Sevier Crespo, Instagram, Sevier Crespo, Facebook, the same. I think it's pretty much SevierCrespo.com. Instagram, it's all kind of the same. And some of my work, I do have a page for my production company, which is throughthescope.com, THRU thescope.com. And, just a little bit about myself and some of the work that I've done and things like that. And that's where they can find me.
And by the way, I shot you a Facebook friend request today, by the way. So you can make sure to decline that.
Yeah, done.
You'd be like everybody else, like who? Oh, not this guy. Decline or ignore, whatever it is now. But everybody, it's at davebullis.com. I'm going to link to everything that Sevier and I talked about. On Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis, and of course the podcast Twitter is at DB Podcast. So Sevier Crespo, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me. You have a great rest of your day, and, keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.